Support for this podcast comes from the Utah Office of Tourism, announcing the Four Corners School of Outdoor Education summer camps. Send your kids on a river or backpacking adventure this summer with educational summer camps in the Bears Ears Cedar Mesa area. Join in educational adventures that include night sky programs, art, geology, and service projects throughout this majestic region. Visit fourcornerschool.org/adventure for more information.
Now, the Three Martini Lunch with Greg Corombos and Jim Garrity.
And welcome, everyone, to the Tuesday edition of the Three Martini Lunch, along with Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. We do have three martinis for you today, but they're not good, bad, or crazy. They're all related to the horrific tragedy that took place outside the arena in Manchester, England, on Monday evening. We should tell you today also that we're sponsored by Simply Safe Home Security. Visit simplysafe.com/ricochet and get a special 10% discount when you order today. As I'm sure the vast majority of our listeners are already aware, this terrorist attack, as it appears to be now, took place at the very conclusion of an Ariana Grande concert in Manchester. That was about 10:30 local time in Britain on Monday night, 5:30 Eastern time. What we know at this point is that there was an improvised explosive device that a terrorist set off in an apparent suicide bombing. People were filing out. The bomber was standing at the box office outside the arena. This was not in the arena. Right now, the death toll is at 22, with about 59 injured. Some say the injury toll is higher than that. As soon as it happened, there's just this huge wave of panic. And this video has obviously made the rounds, but just listen to how quickly the panic sets in here in Manchester.
Oh my God. What's going on? What just happened? What's going on? Oh my God!
And as your colleague David French pointed out today, apparently, Jim, that's the sound that really gets terrorists excited, is young girls getting panicked and running for their lives and just being absolutely terrified. Theresa May, the British Prime Minister, speaking earlier today, she said a lot of different things. Here's one of the things that she offered to the British people.
We now know that a single terrorist detonated his improvised explosive device near one of the exits of the venue, deliberately choosing the time and place to cause maximum carnage and to kill and injure indiscriminately. We struggle to comprehend the warped and twisted mind that sees a room packed with young children not as a scene to cherish, but as an opportunity for carnage.
And sadly, as the victims get identified here, Jim, we are finding out that it's exactly who we thought it would be. The most recent one to be identified is an 8-year-old girl. This is from the UK Guardian. A beautiful little girl has been named as a victim of the suspected suicide attack at the Ariana Grande concert. 8-year-old Safi Rose Roussos was at the concert with her mother. The head teacher at the Tarleton Community Primary School said she was simply a beautiful little girl in every aspect of the word. She was loved by everyone, and her warmth and kindness will be remembered fondly. Safi was quiet and unassuming with a creative flair. The first victim named was 18-year-old Georgina Callender, where she was a student at Runshaw College. Very many people grieving there, of course. Also, another one named a 26-year-old man, John Atkinson from Radcliffe, and the tributes pouring into him as well. Jim, so just all these lives uprooted due to pure evil.
It's absolutely appalling. It feels like each year, every couple of months, we have something like this, whether it's the people gathering for the celebration in Nice in France last year, the Christmas market in Berlin, people just riding the bus in London back in 2005. You know, the terrorist threat before us doesn't really care about the circumstances. Wherever we gather, they want to kill us. They don't care that this was a arena full of children. I think this says a great deal about their worldview. I think anyone who wants to say, "Oh, there's room for dialogue here. We need to recognize their causes. We need to recognize their grievances." No, we don't. No, we don't. There is no rationality here. There is no logic here. There is no discernible agenda. Ultimately, this is simply a serial killer on a larger scale who knows chemistry and just wants to kill for the sake of killing. I found the news since this broke, Greg, besides the usual depressing and horrifying and enraging nature of it. As usual, I should know better than to expect the best of social media, Greg. But I was intrigued yesterday as soon as the reports came through and you heard about an explosion in an arena as a concert was ending. People, including myself, said, "Oh God, this looks like a bombing. It looks like terrorism." And people said, "Don't how can you even say that? How can you jump to that conclusion?" Well, when you have a sudden explosion that happens to occur in a place where lots and lots of people gather at a particular time when it's going to be most crowded, could it be a natural occurrence or some sort of accident, like a natural gas leak or something like that? It's always theoretically possible, but it's not terribly likely. This is how the odds of the worst possible thing happening at the worst possible time, just simply are not all that likely. And we live in a world where the threat of terrorism exists. And gatherings like this are what they like to target. And I don't really understand why people are so people get really riled up about this when you kind of point out what seems like obvious. And so I'm kind of, I suppose we shouldn't be surprised by this. There seems a real anger at people who are, quote unquote, speculating on Twitter, Greg. I don't know about you, but to me, this is part of how humans deal with something sudden and horrific happening. They begin to look for the causes. They try to make sense out of something that seems senseless. And so I think I suppose the people who are lashing out at me are just looking for somebody to blame. I think it's a statement about social media and a statement about our world that some people, because there's no bomber to be mad at anymore, he's blown himself to pieces. We get mad at people on social media instead.
Let's move on to our second part of this discussion and President Trump's reaction. He's still in Israel when the day began, and he was actually standing right next to Mahmoud Abbas in Bethlehem following their discussions. And Trump mincing no words about what he thinks of these people. And it's words that we've heard before in other contexts. Here's what the president had to say.
So many young, beautiful, innocent people living and enjoying their lives murdered by evil losers in life. I won't call them monsters because they would like that term. They would think that's a great name. I will call them from now on losers because that's what they are. They're losers. And we'll have more of them. But they're losers. Just remember that.
So, Jim, you got the chattering classes here in Washington, very upset that the president used that term. I don't know that it makes a whole lot of difference in whether people will do things. It probably doesn't. I don't particularly mind the unvarnished verbiage there because, quote unquote, we condemn this in the strongest possible terms doesn't seem to have done a lot of good either.
I don't understand why people would get that upset over it. There is no magic word that we can say that is going to stop them from doing this. Other than maybe master or surrender is the only thing that will cause them to do that. You don't stop them by calling them the right word. But there's something to what the president is saying here that, look, these people don't do this because they're so strong and powerful and all of that. They do this because in many cases they are angry at the world. At the heart of the jihadist mentality is this idea that, wait a second, Allah promised us we would be winning. Allah promised us that we were the one true faith and that our way of doing it and anybody who deviates from it is an infidel and should submit to us, and they're not submitting to us. And so there's this kind of crisis in the mind of the average Islamist of, wait a second, the world is not in keeping with what I have been taught. How can it be this way? And the way they say, the reason it is this way is we haven't punished the infidels enough. If we just hurt them enough, they will surrender, indicating how much they don't understand us. They don't understand our values. They don't understand our psychology, our cultures, our long, proud tradition of fighting to protect our rights going back for generations. On some level, I don't think there's much point in arguing about what we should call them because in the end, they are who they are. And whether, it's not like there's a particular word that's going to deter them. But I think the president's assessment that they're losers does kind of, I think it might needle them a little bit. It might make I think it's also an accurate observation that they do this because they see themselves as having no other tools to function in the modern world. And the only way they can find a certain sense of emotional satisfaction is by going out with a bang, no pun intended, and by taking people out. We talked earlier in the week about how Trump offered kind of a theological message, a challenge to the Muslim world to say, look, you have to teach that this is not how people get into heaven. This is not how people get to some sort of eternal reward, that they will be remembered in shame for this, that their soul will be condemned for this. Clearly, this guy needed to hear that more, and hopefully this message is taken to heart in the Muslim world. I understand ISIS has already claimed responsibility for it. We'll probably know more in the coming days and weeks whether this is genuine responsibility in the sense that he was some sort of operative of theirs, or whether he was just some guy inspired by their ideology and rhetoric.
Wow. There are bad guys pretty much everywhere. Not all of them, thankfully, doing what this one did in Manchester, but danger presents itself in a lot of different ways. And as we turn to Simply Safe, it's a good reminder that even in your own home, you might not be safe. Getting a good night's sleep is easier said than done, especially if you think you just maybe heard a noise downstairs. So think about that. Have you ever been in that situation? What do? You could turn on all the lights and keep watch, or you could check your kids' beds every hour, sleep with one eye open, or you can rest easy knowing that your home and family are protected with Simply Safe.
When you install your Simply Safe home security system, you are arming your home with powerful sensors that actually tell you if a door opens or a window breaks. There is a 105 decibel siren that alerts you to the first sign of trouble. Trust me, you'll hear it. And a dedicated team of security professionals are watching over you 24/7, ready to send the police. With Simply Safe, there are no long-term contracts, and around-the-clock monitoring is only $14.99 a month. So don't spend another night second-guessing your home safety.
Get Simply Safe and get some rest. Go to simplysafe.com/ricochet and get a special 10% discount when you order today. That's spelled SIMPLISAFE.com. That's simplysafe.com/ricochet for 10% off your order. Simplysafe.com/ricochet. And Jim, in our final part of our discussion here on the aftermath of Manchester, there's a couple different things that come to mind. One, of course, is how this was carried out. It appears to be an improvised explosive device, which was basically a massive nail bomb, which ought to remind a lot of people about what happened at the Boston Marathon back in April of 2013 and the carnage that happened there, and makes you wonder how only 3 people died in that situation, given the crowds that day. We don't know the exact method, whether it was the pressure cookers like the Tsarnaevs used or what method it was, perhaps just a traditional explosive. But the point is that he waited outside the box office. He didn't even get to security. He waited outside, waited for the massive crowds to exit, and that's when he decided to inflict maximum carnage, as the prime minister said. The other thing we're learning, and it's still vague at this point, so we don't know what the context really is, but CBS News confirming Tuesday that the man who blew himself up the previous night, known as Salman Abedi, was known to British authorities prior to the attack. And whether that's in connection to terror cells or potential terrorist activity, or whether he had just been arrested for something unrelated to terrorism, we don't know. But digging into that and coming to grips, Jim, I think with the fact that being able to pull off an attack like this, it's not that hard in a free society.
It is. It is one of those depressing facts. 2 aspects to take on here. One is that, as far as I know, people I know who handle this sort of matters for the government think very highly of the counterterrorism forces of the United Kingdom. MI5, all of their police forces, all their counterterrorism forces, internal security, their intelligence agencies. You can insert all the James Bond jokes here. No, they know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, not just because of the struggle against Islamist terror since 9/11, but going back to the days of the Irish Republican Army blowing up places, including Manchester, back in the 80s and 90s. So these guys are experienced and they know what they're doing. The problem is simply one of manpower. It takes several dozen agents to keep around-the-clock monitoring of a particularly dangerous individual. And they simply don't have, if you need, 24 or 36 guys to do around-the-clock surveillance of somebody, well, you're going to run out of, you're only going to cover a fraction of the people who you'd like to watch in a circumstance like this. It sounds like this guy was on their list, but not one of their priority figures. And it is deeply, troubling and disturbing when you look at the scale of the threat and the sheer number of potential threats in the United Kingdom. The other thought, which is one I think is a little more relevant to us here at home, is this question of every time there's an attack like this, as awful as this is, there's this, well, what we do is we're going to deploy more security, put in metal detectors, put in Jersey barriers, bomb-sniffing dogs and stuff like that. And all of those are, I understand everybody who's proposing that and everyone who's enacting that has the best of intentions. They only want to prevent an attack. I don't think it's really the main focus we should be looking at a time like this, because suicide bombers just want crowds. This guy wasn't able to get into the arena, and it didn't matter. He just waited until the large crowd was coming out of the arena and was able to blow himself up in the foyer. The very nature of security metal detectors and security lines and stuff like that, where they're checking packages, generally it creates a line, which creates a crowd, which is all the suicide bomber wants. If he can't get into a particular location, he can blow himself up just outside the location, and in most cases do as much damage as he really wants to do. So it is a deeply troubling matter. I recognize that there are not a lot of easy solutions to this, but I think we're going down the wrong road if we try to start turning every building into a fortress. You see this sort of debate whenever you see one of those awful school shootings. Yeah, you can turn a school into a fortress and make it extremely hard for anybody to get in and out. But that's generally what the shooters want. You basically want people to be able to get in and out of a building very quickly, particularly in a case of a fire or other emergency. So I granted there are not a lot of easy solutions to all this, but I hope we don't end up making the wrong decisions, trying to prevent one tragedy and then exacerbating the problems of another one.
Well said, Jim. And we'll see how the reaction continues to this. The contents of the president's speech could not have been proven more correct less than 48 hours later. So, Jim, talk to you tomorrow.
See you tomorrow, Greg.
Jim Garrity of National Review. I'm Greg Corombos of Radio America. Thanks for being with us today. And don't forget our friends at Simply Safe. Get Simply Safe and get some rest. Go to simplysafe.com/ricochet and get a special 10% discount. Join us again on Wednesday for the next 3 Martini Lunch.
Everyone knows Wingstop brings the flavor. But now in Vegas, we're bringing it literally with Wingstop Delivery. And to mark the occasion, we've created the Bringing It Boneless Bundle. 25 wings, 4 flavors, and 4 dips for just $15.99. Now when your crew gets the craving, just order online and track those wings all the way to your doorstep. Check out our app or head to wingstop.com and choose delivery at checkout. Wingstop, the wing delivery experts. Las Vegas locations only. Everyone knows Wingstop brings the flavor. But now in Vegas, we're bringing it literally with Wingstop Delivery. And to mark the occasion, we've created the Bringing It Boneless Bundle. 25 wings, 4 flavors, and 4 dips for just $15.99. Now when your crew gets the craving, just order online and track those wings all the way to your doorstep. Check out our app or head to wingstop.com and choose delivery at checkout. Wingstop, the wing delivery experts. Las Vegas locations only.